drawings that makes me remember. So maybe somebody would understand that, not my handwriting. I have a handwriting like a doctor, but I don't do doctor. I don't do MD, but I just know how to write like a doctor. And that's the one thing. And the other thing, sometimes they have an illustrator coming to
Hmm.
these events, like
That's fun.
mainly design related events, right? And they have this like illustrations, big illustrations of what was said during this talk. So that could be another way of expressing yourself, I guess, which is really interesting because I guess that people, they want to learn more, but when they engage, they learn much more. So engaging is first a way to really relate to what is said, and more than that, it's a way to relate to other people, to other connections that are available through this content. But sometimes when you see that, you have this chat and
Hmm.
it's going so fast, right?
Yeah.
I had these like experiences, and it's like so fast, and you cannot really read it. So you need a way just to capture what was said, because somebody like wrote something and it was really funny or bright, and then everybody said everything related to that, and you just don't know what was said, right?
Yeah, some of the platforms we use let you upvote comments. And then maybe the next level is seeing a list of top comments very
Mm,
conveniently, right?
yeah,
Yeah, but
makes sense.
you can also have assistants in the event that are just pulling out those comments as they go by, which makes it a lot easier.
Hmm.
And then you
Yeah,
can use that to create a highlight email after the event and send that out.
Hmm. It'd be
yeah,
nice to be able to do that in real time. Like here on this platform, by the way, if you're watching live, you can ask us a question. We can show it on
right.
screen. But
Yeah.
what if we could do that with top comments very easily, right? Oh, this comment got 10 posts and it's automatically brought into the presenter and you could share that on screen. That'd be an
Right.
easy next step.
Yeah, I know that in many events, like in the past, and I know like maybe right now it's not that like innovative, but in the past they had these hashtags and they were connecting to Twitter, and they said like this is what was written on Twitter, so these are the most shared tweets that we have on the event and so forth. But I get that maybe
Hmm.
right now there are like better options. So what are the common mistakes organizers make with virtual events today?
Yeah, if you want to take
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
Like
some of
first, don't be late. That's a
uh,
good thing.
yeah, okay. Well, whatever. We forgive you. That was
Okay, okay.
one of the things is reading off of a script that can be really challenging for
Wow.
attendees to
Wow.
listen to.
It's like the worst thing ever. Like
Mhm.
somebody having the slides, which is like reminding himself what he says and he reads it, which is like
Yeah.
the like it's awful.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and typically you wouldn't do that in person if you're
You
presenting.
know,
So I
you
don't know
shouldn't.
why. Yeah, you shouldn't, but I don't know
Mm.
why people think it's okay to do online. I think that there tends to be a mental disconnect between presenters and the audience if they're not used to presenting online. And it is important to visualize and that there is an audience even in the room with you as you're talking, and just keep flowing with it. And also, if you are going to read notes, then put your notes up close to the camera so that you're looking into the camera when you're talking and not just looking down.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
furthermore, feel the meaning of the words. It's so important. If you have a script, don't read in a monotone voice, but put some energy and emotion into it. You can get away with it. It takes a little practice, but better than a
Yeah.
script would be an outline for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I talk like for many years, people come to me and they talk to me about how can I start with talking. So because sometimes they're a bit like reluctant to start like talking, like it's scary, right? So when I think about it, there is this balance between being really ready and knowing exactly what are the words in each like sentence that I want to engage with, and the other side is like being natural. And sometimes in virtual events it looks like, yeah, I can just read, I can just stick to the script, right? But it's even worse than live events, I guess, because it's already a bit like more apart than usual. So in order
Yeah.
to be more engaged and more connected, you need to be even more natural and more charismatic and
Yeah.
more like emotional and more
I
and
totally
and
agree. Yeah.
so
Yeah,
it's even more than that.
Definitely. And attendees that are showing up to virtual events, they're in a more comfortable environment typically. They're more relaxed themselves. They're more authentic themselves. They haven't just rushed to get on a plane to travel, and they're not dressed up for the occasion necessarily. So that you need to meet that authenticity of your audience as well.
Yeah, you know,
And
like I had the previous, like 2 talks ago, I had someone who is like a trainer for TED speakers, and she said that in many cases you need to think about the emotion or to have something which is tangible while you're talking, like a story or something that they could relate to or a feeling that they could relate to. And I think that when you're virtual, it's even more important because you don't have anything tangible in front of you, right? So you have
Yeah.
this flat screen and
Yeah.
it's harder.
I always say it's important to frame the problem, whether it's for written copy or it's an online talk. Nobody really, you can't just jump into solutions. You can't just read off the script. Like, remind them why they're there. What's going to happen if they don't act on this solution, right? I
Yeah.
used to lead self-development workshops for over a decade. And, so we're getting people to, let's say, like stress relief workshops primarily. If you want to get somebody to change their behavior, you have to really emphasize what's going to happen if they don't, right? And so ask them, like, what's the result? How does stress show up in your life, and how big of a problem is that? And then exaggerate that, right?
Yeah.
So
That
I would
to
suggest to
be
do
like,
the same
this
here.
is the problem here.
Yeah, it's bigger than that, isn't it? Right? And you make it sound like humorously large, and then they're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's actually true. So let's do the same in events in a way. Applying that strategy would look like asking people, what are the challenges they face with this area? Where are they struggling? And then make a little light of how big of a problem that actually is, because people usually understate it. And then they're getting you're pulling them in because you're asking them right at the beginning of the session, hey, I want to hear from you. Put it in the chat. What's the biggest thing you've struggled with? And they'll be like, oh, they actually care what I think. And then they're not waiting till the end of the session for Q&A. Okay.
Right.
And they love that. And you read it off and they're happy to hear you share. But
yeah, and that really brings me back to what I was talking about earlier, is working more on the questions that you're going to ask at that event as opposed to just your presentation. So those questions become even more important. And then how are you going to structure those conversations? If you can break people out into smaller groups, then definitely do that. But if you're using the chat, you can still do a lot just with chat with the questions that you're asking.
throughout the
Yeah.
session, not just at the beginning and the end. Get a
Yeah.
pulse as you go.
Yeah.
Keep reminding people that this is live. You're there with them and you want to hear from them.
Right. Because that's the thing, because they would say, okay, so what's the difference between me seeing it right now than going to YouTube and seeing something that was recorded 5 years ago? So what is the gap here? So it needs to be different than usual video, and the interaction is the different thing. So what you're saying is actually training the speakers in order to be better in the live events and
Yeah.
in virtual events and maybe in hybrid. So for me, just imagining hybrid, I've never done hybrid. I've done either or. It's like not both. And I think it's like a new way of interacting, actually, because when you see people, that's obvious. You see their faces. And for me, it's much more